fiction, science fiction, horror, fantasy, crime, LGBT, thriller.
You have now entered the House of Mystery.
Welcome back into the House of Mystery. I'm Al Warren, and Mr. Dave Martino's back from Karate Camp 18. Isn't it
18, yes.
Yeah. Are they doing another Karate Kids season, isn't it? Like season 6?
Yeah.
What the hell?
Yeah. No, I think this is their last season.
I hope so. Or beating it to death. Boy, I'll tell you, I don't know how he survives all these seasons at this age. I mean, he's my age. He's your age, something like that. I mean, he's old.
Well, it's really not about him, though. It's about his students. Well, I mean, it is, but
yeah,
he's not the one. Well, he's fighting a little bit. But.
He's Grasshopper. No, he's like you can snatch the beans. Well, you know what I mean. I just mean, remember he could snatch the beans and all that stuff. Right? I mean, that's back in the 70s. That's a long time ago. But
I was there. I watched it.
Yeah, you were snatching the beans, and they let you free in the world. And look what happened.
I know.
Yeah,
terrible. But the world is the way it is today.
Well, yeah, it's your fault. I'm blaming it all on you. No. Well, who are we talking to? We have got a book. The book is called Divide It, and it's book 1 in the Divide It series. And the author is with us. That's C.C. Robinson. So thank you for being here, C.C.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Well, you're welcome. You're still here. That's great. Yeah. This is your first official book that you've written and had published, right? Like you've done little things before. You've never had a full novel done before, right?
That is correct, yeah. I've published a novella in January, and then I've had a fiction piece in other places. But yes, this is my first full-length novel, and it's the first of 4 in the series. What
got you into this writing world? Like, were you hurt as a child? Or?
No, my parents are awesome. I always compose stories. I just am now sharing them. I'll tell you about this one. As a kid, I remember walking around in my neighborhood, and a neighbor had constructed a berm. And so, of course, as you do when you're 8 years old, who died and who's buried there? And so I had this whole story woven in about, the gangster mafia uncle that this guy killed and buried in the front yard. And my friends were like, no way. And I was like, yeah, I saw him. And then I had this whole story woven in. So I've always composed stories, some believable and some not. And so hopefully readers will enjoy my latest story, Divided.
Well, and so now you say it's going to be, if this is book 1 of 4 and it's a series, so are you an outliner and you had all 4 of them kind of planned?
I try to plot broadly. I do have all 4 planned as far as where the characters are going, and I've actually written to the end. And those are first drafts, so they're not very good, and they need to be rewritten. But at least I know where I'm going. I know where the characters are going. We've had our negotiations and settled on a good plot. So I do have all 4 books written. They're all named. And I know who is the main protagonist, who is the one who advances the plot in each one, and I sort of know where we're going. So that's good.
How do you, what would you classify this book? What is this series? Is it like science fiction? Where do you put this?
So it would be broadly science fiction, but more particularly young adult dystopian. All the protagonists are 18 years old, and they're all in that sort of coming of age, leaving their family of origin, trying to figure out their lives stage. So we get the fun young adult aspects with all those wonderful tropes of found family and friendship, conquering all. But then we also get the dystopian fiction layered on top of it with the oppressive government, rebel movement, fighting against impossible odds, the longing for freedom, longing for liberty. And so they're kind of meshed together in the one big old wide dystopian funness.
Funness of dystopia.
Yeah, exactly.
We're all going to die. Now, your characters are young men, and I'm not saying you're old, but how do you stay up to date with what someone, let's say that 18 today, or when you're writing the book, an 18-year-old would think and act? Do you have a sort of a secret?
I have a huge secret.
Oh, okay.
I have 3 Gen Z teenagers in my house.
I'm sorry.
18, 19, and 22. I am an expert on teenager. I feel like I've lived through it all. And they're all the kind of kids who had their friends over literally all the time, eating through my pantry like locusts. So I'm very well acquainted with that generation, with that age range. And I love that age range. Is probably one of my favorite times, high school into college. They're figuring out their lives, and there's so much angst, and everything's the end of the world. So it's perfect, actually, for dystopian setting.
Well, how do you get, so now your main character, Marcos Sanchez, so that's a male, right?
Yes.
How do you get into the mindset of writing a male point of view?
I did a ton of research before I ever started, because I'm well aware that I'm neither a male or Hispanic. And so I didn't want to misappropriate. And two, I didn't want to stereotype or broad brush. And so I sat down with people from these ethnicities that I'm writing from, as well as a young white male, because I'm also not a young white male, and really understood what's important to these individuals. What does family look like? What does culture look like? What do traditions look like in your household? What's important to you? What is not important to you? How do you see society? Tell me some stories about times when you felt prejudiced against or hated, and then tell me how you responded to that. Tell me what it's like with friendships of people from other ethnicities. And so I asked a lot of questions. These interviews, my recordings for these go on for over 30 hours. And then I took that and I made the composites of the different characters. And then I took them back to those people and I said, what do you think? Does this feel real to you? Does this feel like someone you would know in your own ethnicity? Now, granted, they're in a different setting because my characters are in a dystopian setting. So there's a little bit of like, I could see myself here or no. And then we went back and forth and I made adjustments to both the world and the setting and to the characters themselves with that feedback. And then after the first draft, or after I should say the second really revised draft, because we all know first drafts are bad. So this was my cleaned up draft. I asked those same people to read again and say, okay, I've taken your advice. I incorporated these changes. What do you think about the scenes now? And I got more feedback and made more changes. So it was a process.
So you're not dressing up like your characters and then...
No. Although I love Latin dancing. So Marcos and I have that in common.
Oh, Dave likes that too.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think I heard, yeah, of course. I think I heard you say we decided on the storyline earlier. Are your characters talking to you?
Yeah, they do.
And what I'm really asking is, do you have an inner monologue, and can you hear your character?
Oh, for sure, yes. And sometimes, like Marcos, if I hadn't written in a long chunk of time, I would get Marcos dreams, and he would it was torture for me to see him like, come on, you've got to free us. Get on it. Why aren't you writing? So,
was he dancing in those dreams?
No, he only danced after I finished the book.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Wow.
He didn't show me his moves until the end.
No. Oh, well, this is a nice show. We don't talk that way. Save that for the X-rated shows, coast to coast.
Yeah, we're keeping this PG-13.
Yeah, I got to be nice here. Well, and so you hear your characters and all that stuff, but do they? What's your relationship with, let's say, Marcos? We'll pick on him. What kind of relationship do you consider having? Is it like a brother? Is it like a son, a friend? Like, family? I hear all sorts of descriptions from different authors. What's yours?
They're all like my kids. But then again, when my own children's friends are over, they're like my kids too. Like some of them even call me mom. So it's an extension of those real life relationships, except with my fictional characters.
So what happens in book one here? What are readers, what should they expect?
So we've got the setting of obviously dystopian. So we have an oppressive government that has divided the population up into its ethnic bundles and put up walls in between all the ethnicities. And so white, black, Asian, Hispanic, they aren't integrated. They're not talking. They don't know each other. They don't even encounter each other in day-to-day life. they are locked behind walls, and the reason is to keep the peace, but the real reason is control. And so in that setting, 40 years after our Civil War, when this happened, teenagers are then growing up without knowing anyone from another ethnicity, but they're a blank slate. So they don't have the current like suspicion or prejudice or hatred. They just want to know. They want to learn. And so that's my 4 teenagers. Marcos is the star of book 1. And it opens with him running. He is a runner. He longs for escape. He wants to get outside the walls, outside his life. His father is manipulative and abusive. And so he does the impossible and actually gets outside the city. Unfortunately, he's caught and is sent to a secret and illegal labor camp where he encounters an underground resistance movement, meets other teens from these other ethnicities for the first time ever, and starts to work together in community with these, with Rose and Harriet and Jason. And they really seek to free that labor camp, in the process also freeing Marcos from within and from without. It's collaborative. So it's really exciting. There's lots of thrills. There's betrayals. There's action and adventure. There's found family. There's learning about each other and stumbling through things as a teenager, getting angry and upset about things that, of course, as adults, we don't think they should get angry and upset about. But, that's YA.
Well, it's a good thing that the world's not like that today. So,
Yeah, right.
Good thing none of this.
And that's why I wrote it. They need this.
Well, yeah, and that's kind of leads to my next thing. It's like when someone reads book 1 and, hopefully they get into the other books, but starting with book 1, do you have a subtext in it? Is there something you want people to get from the book besides the entertainment?
Absolutely. Yes. Great question. 1, I want them to be inspired to live life outside of their boxes. And I think we all kind of live in boxes. Things that are our comfort zone, our day-to-day routines where we see the same people. Maybe those people look like us. Most likely they probably do. And we eat food that is comfortable with us. For us, we are in areas where we're comfortable. But I want people to be inspired to go outside of that and deal with each other face to face across a table, like a dining table, like a meal. And instead of arguing on social media or believing lies about someone else that aren't true, and instead finding out the truth by relating to each other. And so my hope is to inspire young people to do that in a way that maybe us older generations haven't done that. That's really the hope, and there is hope through the whole book. There's courage to go outside your comfort zone throughout the whole book, and I hope that inspires young people to take that step in real life.
Right. So, Dave, hope you learn that. Stop being so mean.
I'll
Social
try.
Media. He's all over social media, calling everyone names and being mean.
It's horrible.
Big bully. Embarrassing. Tell you. I don't know what I'm going to do.
I'm terrible.
Makes me cry almost every day. Well, there you have it. Poor you. Now, your bad guy, the people that are, let's say, causing the trouble or being on the wrong side here or doing bad things, do you like writing that character?
I do. I really do. So the bad guy in book 1 is actually Jason's dad. He's the lead bad guy. Then there's some other bad guys involved, some pretty bad dudes, actually. But Hudson Britwell is the main focus of villainy in book 1. And yeah, I do like writing villains. I think it's fun to play around with how evil will they be, but also villains can sometimes have a good side, right? Like some people might actually really like them, and they may do good things for some people. But it's always their motives that you have to question. So it was fun writing Hudson Britwell's character.
So, and the violence. Is there a lot of violence? Are you aware? Are you conscious about how you write that on the page?
I am. In fact, from the first draft into this draft, I kind of pulled back in some areas. So there is violence. It is graphic at points. There is death on the page, if you will. There's violence on page. There's abuse that is referenced and talked about. There's no sexual violence, which I was very clear about keeping out of this and the rest of my novels, because I don't think that that's helpful. But you wouldn't have dystopian fiction without that element of violence. But I'm very clear about it, what that level is.
So at the end of the day, when you've taken the time and did all that interviewing and all the work to put together the book and even the format of the series and all that stuff, how do you think this process has changed you or even changed you as a writer?
It's definitely helped me to see other people differently and to not assume I understand, because I think that may be a temptation for someone who looks like me to just project that majority culture on other people, but that's not their lived experience. And so I've learned to ask a lot of questions and to listen to what's being said and to what's not being said as well. Because sometimes people are very polite and they don't want to say, oh, I don't like when people do this, but really listening to the subtext and saying, I'm hearing this, but I'm not hearing this. What do you think about this? And learning to ask questions and listen carefully.
What do you think the biggest challenge is in writing something like this?
The biggest challenge in writing something like this, there's probably a couple. I'll say the first is keeping the action moving without getting bogged down in detail. Because it's such a different world, that the temptation is to go into enormous detail about the littlest thing that you imagine in your head. And the reader doesn't necessarily need to see that. Sketching a broad picture and then letting them fill in the details, trusting the reader, I think is more interesting. So I think that's probably the first challenge in this type of situation where you've got such a different world that you're creating. And then the second thing is keeping the plot moving and not letting it get bogged down with, characters eating lunch or having dialogue that doesn't make a difference to the plot. And so being very plot focused with this, I think, is important.
Well, it sounds like there's also a lot of world building in this in these novels. How do you keep track of the continuity? Do you have tools, a system, or just a notepad?
Oh my goodness, yes. So on Scrivener, I have so many notes. I have research tabs. There's setting details. I have, if you printed it out, it would be pages and pages of different notes, ideas, and the like, but it's all online, all virtually there, so I can keep track of it. And then I do track different aspects of the world building through the novel so that I make sure I keep things the same, that I don't, in my ADHD bunny brain, make up something else. So no, I got to keep it the same. So every time that I talk about this certain person, I've got one character, he's a captain of the patrols, which are their police. And I describe him as square. His haircut is square, his jaw is square, his body is square. He's like a square. And so keeping that consistent helps people remember who he is and track that detail through the novel.
So where do you draw your inspiration from? And it doesn't, I don't mean necessarily other writers, and stuff like that, but is there something that gets you writing or in the writing mode? Is there like movies or music or going to the park? What works for you?
Honestly, I've never had writer's block, and I don't know if that's because I plot or because I work another part-time job, and so my time is limited. Is when I sit down, I just get to it. I've never really experienced that phenomenon that other people talk about. But I would say for my inspiration, I had an all-night dream in 2012 and saw the world, saw where we were as a nation, saw what had happened to us, and then saw the walls in the division and met my 4 characters. And I still hold that dream in my heart. And that is my inspiration to get this written. I need to get this out so that we can begin relating to each other around tables instead of arguing in rows.
Oh, so you want to have your friends and family over Thanksgiving finally again.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, I've seen plenty of changes in my life, so I think it's just something, hopefully it gets better, So how long did it take you to write this book?
Way too long, Alan. Way too long. I was in the draft. Well, I was in the interview phase for a couple years because I am working another job. Once I started drafting, it took me 10 years and probably 5 different drafts before I got it into a place where I'm like, okay, I can now write I was not a long-form fiction writer before this, so I had a lot to learn. I had a lot of craft I needed to learn, a lot of webinars, a lot of writing craft books, and honing my writing, working with an editor, and that was fantastic. So she really helped me elevate the level of my writing, and to the point where I'm happy now I'm content with where Divided is. I know we always improve as we continue to write, but I'm happy where we're starting from, and let's go with the rest.
Yeah, you're always going to look back at your work and look at it differently because you learn so much going through each book, right? So, you always look back and go, maybe I should have done this. Stuff that question things. That's natural. How long before you get the next ones out? Like, how long do your fans going to have to wait? Like a year or 2 years between each novel, or what's the deal?
So in general, we'll do a one release per year for the main novels in the book, but just because I know people are impatient, I will be releasing novellas between each novel. And these will be side quests of some of the secondary characters, maybe even a villain thrown in, which will be fun to write. And those will come out sort of in the late winter, early spring, in between the fall releases of the main novels.
Now, are you doing social media? Can they find you anywhere online? Do you have a website? Where do people find Cece?
I am almost everywhere except Twitter. I don't really go on Twitter next, but on all the social media, I am at Cece Robinson Author. Super easy. My happy place is Instagram. So if you want to see me on a regular basis, that's where I hang out on a regular basis. And then my website is ccrobinsonauthor.com.
Of course, we'll have all of that up on ours as well, so people can find you easily with one click.
Thank you.
And I was going to, all those characters, do you, all the little characters or the, villains or people that come and go in the book, do you have the same relationship? Do you hear them and work with them in the same way as your main characters?
No, I don't. They don't occupy the headspace quite like the main characters. And there's one who's trying to, and I've kind of told her not yet. Not yet.
Just send her to Dave.
Yeah. Well, speaking of that, do your characters, since you said you mainly plot, you're plotting these out, do your characters surprise you? Do they kind of take the plot off the rails and make it difficult for you to get to where you want to go?
Yes. How do you know that? How do you know this just happened to Rose? Mm-hmm. She's got herself in a box, and I'm looking at her going, okay, how are you going to get yourself out of this? This was not in my plan.
Yep.
How are you going to get yourself out of this?
Rose is Dave's sister.
Yeah.
Rose is the hothead of the crew. I will tell you that.
Wow. Do you have a tough time writing a real mean person like that then? Like a hothead? Because you don't seem like that yourself. Like you don't seem, maybe you are, but you certainly don't seem like you're, as you say, a hothead or bad temper and stuff. So
people are surprised when they read my writing, when they know me in real life. They're like, wait a minute, this is so different. I think it takes, I don't know, I just get into a different place when I write, and it allows me to be, satirical or angsty or what have you, whatever the piece needs.
Did you run a sense of humor throughout the story?
I try to. I'm not as funny as you guys, though.
Oh, we're not funny. Well, it's good to keep it light a little bit somewhere. I try
to inject hope and courage and a little bit of levity. There's maybe some cute scenes too, among particularly Rose and Harriet, as they get to know each other and they connect just as friends, and that's kind of fun to see too.
So where do you get these characters from, like the smaller characters? Do you actually see someone in a coffee shop or hear someone talking in a grocery store or something like that and then kind of pick up on that, or are you listening?
Am I allowed to plead the fifth?
Well, yeah, you can plead whatever, but,
So I will say I never base a character completely on someone in real life, because I don't think that's helpful. But I may borrow an aspect of their personality that I see.
Well, we've got a few of those people on the other line right now that you used, and they have something to say.
This is your life.
This is your life, yeah. Turn on the camera.
If it looks like a mirror, it is.
Well, there you go. Yeah, sure. It's the way the world is. Well, We enjoyed having you on the show, and we wish you the best of luck. And the book, Divide It, and it's book 1 now in the Divide It series. So, CeCe Robinson, thank you for being here.
Thank you so much, gentlemen, for having me.
Thanks, CeCe.
This has been a production of the House of Mystery Radio Show. To find out more about our show, guests, or hosts, go to our website at houseofmysteryradio.com.